Since I started work with the Chamber, it's been almost 9 years ago, anytime we have a meeting like this, people always want Rich Barta to be on the agenda. So we have featured him many, many times. So we are pleased to have Rich Barta with us today. And the main reason they want us to have Rich here is because they all want to know, Rich, what is next at White Oak? So this has been a year full of announcements. So Rich, if you'll join me, I got a couple questions. You just want to stand here and answer a couple questions with me? So 2 years ago, you guys might remember right here on this screen, Rich Barta showed us this dramatic entry there was going to be to the White Oak area. It included a water feature and the stonework and the landscaping. Well, as you guys know, that is there. And I was by there over the weekend, and I saw this huge water thing going on. What is up with that water thing? And God, how to make this stay up?
Well, thank you for having me back. And first of all, I'd like to say I cannot tell you how much we appreciate all the continued support that we've had from Garner at all levels in Garner, and politically, your leadership on the staff from the Chamber, and just the citizens all together. It's the reason we're here and the reason we're still here, and we can't thank you enough. From the water, it's kind of an interesting thing, and you may have seen it start and stop a few times. And if you made it over to Carolina Ale House while we were trying to figure out what to do with it, you may have received a free car wash. Because every time the wind would blow, one direction it would wash cars in the parking lot, and the other direction it would water our grade slope going down to the ramp. So we had to look at that carefully, and we've come up with a wind gauge which is now installed. So when the wind blows over 2 knots, it'll drop to 50% of the height, and if it blows over 7 knots, it'll actually shut off. So you'll see it start and stop, but the fountains are permanently connected now, and the only reason they'll be lower or off at times will be wind speed. So, but we like that addition, and if you haven't had an opportunity to go out there at night, they are lit from underneath, so they're actually pretty dramatic, nice to see at night, and we think it'll be a nice gateway presentation for not only White Oak but for Garner to give people the right first impression as they come in.
Okay, so I haven't been at night yet, so I'll have to make the trip back at night so I can see with the lights on it. Okay, so last year when we were here, all the road construction was in process at White Oak, and me and a lot of others didn't quite understand what all the traffic patterns were going to look like when it was finished. Well, we know now. We've seen it. So what do you think? Did it do what it was supposed to do out there?
Yeah, that's a great question, because you always wonder when you design them whether they're going to function correctly. But everything we anticipated would happen with those road improvements has happened. It prevented the weave movement that DOT was concerned about and that had caused several accidents out there. And it is built to now accommodate not only growth at White Oak but on the 70 corridor, and I think you'll start to realize that, and you're seeing seeds of it now. The resonating value of supporting those road improvements, and so again, thank you for your support, because I can almost assure you that we wouldn't be where we are and talking about the improvements in stores that are at White Oak today without those road improvements. And currently, we probably have approaching 600 people employed at White Oak, on the northeast quadrant, and that will change when the hotel comes, and it will change again when we start opening stores on the west side. With what we have in the pipeline right now, there's probably 1,000 collective jobs out there just to get the engine started. So.
And also, when we were here together last year from this stage, Rich announced that the Carolina Ale House was coming to Garner, and we actually made the Triangle Business News the next day because of the announcement you made at our conference. Since then, 8 or 9 restaurants have announced they were coming out of that area. A lot of them are already open. So the question we always have is, can you tell us anything else is coming?
Thank you for having me. No, just kidding. Actually, I will say, many of you know what our shop space consists of out there. We have finished a deal with, in the same building as City Barbecue, on the other end of that building with Blaze Pizza, which is kind of a trend-forward, contemporary pizza concept where you choose your own fresh toppings and they cook it for you in a 780-degree wood-fired oven, and it's actually a really good concept.
So what's the name of it?
Blaze, B-L-A-Z-E.
You heard it here.
So you'll see them coming. And I'm breaking my cardinal rule of announcing things here, but I know some of the folks have been in talking to the city and processing plans, and so I'll give you a little sneak peek on the west side, or on the east side. Let me finish. We have Lady Jane's about to open. That's a haircut store that's kind of progressive, sports-oriented haircut store. Then we have T-Mobile coming in there. You already know Starbucks is there. Five Guys is open. Blaze is coming. We have two more tenants in the works that I can't announce yet because we're not far enough along to say that. But by Thanksgiving, those buildings will be finished. So we will be done. Longhorn is scheduled to open on September 21st. So you'll see them open shortly. So before, by Thanksgiving, you should see a pretty substantially completed site except for the Drury Corner. And that schedule's in their hands, but I'm continuing to hear positive things about their commitment to Garner. On the west side, we have started site work out there, and you may have, it was maybe a little harder to see what we were doing because we worked on the south side on the detention pond for a number of weeks. But the pond is complete. We're on the north side now, so you can see the equipment out there and the earth moving. We are going to deliver pads out there on October 15th of this year. So if we don't, then you might see some heads on sticks out there. But I think, I really believe we'll be okay. We'll be okay with October 15th. And those tenants will include Zaxby's, Red Robin, Panera, and Sheets. I can tell you about.
You heard it again.
And then we have a shop building with a number of other really good tenants I'm not ready to tell you about yet, but
Okay.
but I'll share those with you next year, hopefully along with some bigger announcements.
Okay, so you guys did get some news. You found out several things today. So thank you, Rich. It's always a pleasure having Rich with us. So, Rich, thank you for all you're bringing to Garner, and thank you for all you've done for Garner. And I especially thank you for the partnership you have with us on the Broadway Voices series. Thank you for your support of that. Thank you, Rich. And now let's bring back Joe Stallings.
Okay, we'll see if this microphone's... If it can't, can everybody hear me? Anyways, all right. Rich, appreciate it. It's an exciting time in Garner as we continue to develop and see things come to our community. And with us today, coming to the panel now, are two people who understand economic development and whose passion for the field and practice of it is unparalleled. I'm not just saying that because one of them's my boss. I actually know and believe it and live it every day. Let's welcome now Adrian Cole and John Hodges. Adrian Cole is the head of the economic development for Wake County. Adrian earned her master's degree in public administration at Appalachian State, the finest institution of higher education in the state of North Carolina, and has done economic development work in eastern North Carolina in both Pamlico and Carteret counties. She played a vital role in bringing Campbell University's law school to downtown Raleigh, of which my wife is an alumni. Thank you for bringing that there. And Adrian and her husband Walt have 3 children. John Hodges, my boss there, is the Assistant Town Manager of Development Services for the town of Garner. John's areas of responsibility include planning, engineering, inspections, and economic development. John was the head of the Garner Revitalization Association for 8 years. He currently serves as the president of the Garner Midday Rotary Club and has been living in the town of Garner for 20 years. So thank you, both Adrian and John, for being here today. What we're going to ask is that we give you a few moments for opening statements, and then we'll jump into some Q&A, and then hopefully if there's any questions from the audience, we'll answer those as well. So John, if you'd like to go first and start us out.
Very good, Joe. Thank you, and you're doing a good job today. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the Chamber for their great partnership in helping or putting on this event every year, and for the way that they include the town and us having an opportunity to get our message out about things that are happening in the community. We're here to talk about growth today, and I just wanted to observe that I really believe that Garner is really uniquely positioned for some significant growth in the next few years. First of all, we have land to grow into, and that's not the case everywhere in Wake County. That land is uniquely positioned along I-40, US 70, and 401, so we've got a great opportunity for how to get people to these areas as well. We've got new restaurants and retail like Rich has just told us some more about, and those are great things that attract people here, attracts people that want to live here, and attracts builders who want to build here. We've got new schools that are being built. Some of you saw on the tour today one of the great new facilities that's coming online, and some other schools that are being planned in that same area. And not only are these going to be great for our kids to attend, but we're also getting the vibes from the development community that the proximity of those schools to some of our developable land is really an attraction to some development that we can see in the future. And then we've also got some opportunities for some pretty large-scale type things to happen here, both at the Garner Technology Center site and the Garner Industrial site. Just since January of this year, we have proposed those sites to over 8 companies, and those 8 companies total about $2.2 billion worth of investment and 2,500 jobs. And we're not going to land all 8 of those. Unfortunately, we don't have room to land all 8 of those here in Garner, but the encouraging thing is that 5 of those companies are still considering one site or another in Garner in their shortened list of sites. So we feel very excited about some of the not only retail, residential, but also large industrial and corporate opportunities we have for growth. The challenge that we have and the job we have as town staff is making sure that we're prepared to attract that growth, to sustain that growth, and support the people when they get here. And the thing that's challenging to us and our elected officials is the timing of that. So we have to work very hard to make sure we're doing the right things at the right time. Fortunately for us and for all of you, Garner's Town Council has prioritized that planning ahead and planning for this growth and the infrastructure that it takes to support it is one of their top priorities, and they've gone a step further to actually budget for resources that we need to make sure we take the right steps at the right time to be ahead of the growth that is coming. So that's very fortunate. Not every community has that type of foresight and that type of support throughout its elected leadership. So when the council has given us those priorities, and those then become the things that our staff is going to work on a day-to-day basis, in addition to operating the town and some other stuff that we do, but that really becomes the strategic work that we focus on. So we can't do that on our own. We have to, the work that we have to do to plan for the future goes outside of the boundaries of our current town limits, and it also goes outside the scope of the people that we have working in our town hall. So it involves partnerships, and you've heard from lots of those partners today. People like Raleigh Utilities, we rely on not just to keep water flowing in our taps, but we also rely on them to partner to look strategically at how we're going to grow our infrastructure. And we rely on people like Campo, that you heard from earlier today, to make sure that the plans that we make aren't going to just be a silo, that our plans integrate into larger, more regional plans. I think that Chris said something like this in terms of things fitting together. We have to work with people like Campo to make sure our plans work with others. Actually, our planning staff is over at a conference in Clayton this afternoon, working on a southeastern quadrant plan with Campo on how we're going to all grow together. And then we also partner with folks like Wake County Economic Development, who we've partnered with for a very long time. They not only help us market our community, but they help us prepare the properties that we have for future development and get them ready for developers to want to take a look at them. And they also bring us to the table for opportunities that we probably would not get exposed to on our own. Lastly, we partner with some other entities that are closer to home. We have folks like the Growth Strategies Task Force. This is a group of business leaders, developers, realtors, builders, and citizens who have worked together for over 2 years now to help our town staff and elected leaders better understand how to prepare for growth in the future. So we're fortunate to have partners on many levels, both locally and regionally, to help prepare for growth. So while we're busy looking at some of these long-term strategic type of things that we need to be doing, there's also some day-to-day kind of things that we can look at. And so recently we've made some policy changes that are things that can help us grow more today. Some of you may be familiar with a revised water sewer allocation policy that was adopted recently by our town council. We have also recently passed a new economic incentives policy, and that's going to help us be more attractive when we have some of these large clients coming in looking at us and looking at Garner for their next home for their business. So with the topic of growth, we wanted to share a little bit with you today about the strategic long-term things we're all having to do to be prepared for it, and then some of the day-to-day tactical things that we're doing to make growth happen today. And we believe that a combination of having a council and elected leaders with the foresight to allow us to plan strategically and to support us in doing that, and then also having an eye to the day-to-day things, that we've got Garner very well positioned for a very bright future.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you all very much for having me. I see lots of familiar faces in the audience, so it's very nice to be here. Appreciate the invitation. Wake County Economic Development is a public-private partnership, and we deliver on several sort of core service lines, many of which we're partnering with Garner on. Obviously, business recruitment and expansion, existing industry support, talent recruitment and retention, and I know I'll talk more about the importance of talent to Garner's success and Wake County's success. Public relations and marketing, we're doing a lot in that arena. The Wake County Site Assessment Program, which John touched on, and then innovation and entrepreneurship is another increasing area of focus for us. We're such a smart community, and so we're able to not only attract companies into the market who want to tap that talent and the innovation of our community, but we also are well positioned with our universities and with the talent here and the quality of life to grow our own businesses that want to grow and thrive and stay here. We've got great examples of those companies in our market. We believe strongly in collaboration and partnerships. Economic development is a team sport. We can't do this by ourselves. And so we work very closely with all 12 of our municipalities, with organizations like Wake Tech, like NC State University, Capital Area Workforce Development Board, Research Triangle Regional Partnership, Wake County, the City of Raleigh, Garner, you know, the list goes on and on and on of our partnerships, and we believe strongly in that, and we're stronger because we collaborate so well. We have such strengths in Wake County, and with that comes challenges. So we're paying close attention to connectivity, transportation, air service. I saw Robert Durek here, AT&T Gigabit, having high-speed fiber in our market is important. And we're growing rapidly. Did Jim Hartman touch on some statistics about growth while he was with you all earlier? I caught the back end. So 63 people a day. Did you hear that? Yeah? Okay. 21 of them born here, new kindergarten class a day. Christine. Of the balance of those coming in, 75% have a college degree or higher. That is staggering. Talk about smart. In Wake County, 58.5% of our population has a college degree or higher. That's staggering. That beats almost every other community in the country. I mean, it's huge. So that talent is such a huge draw. I'll talk a little bit later when we get into the Q&A section about what companies are looking at in their site selection process. Talent is their #1 driver. I'd say 90% of the companies that we work with cite talent as their #1 driver. So we'll talk more about that. For us to maintain our current unemployment rate, which over the last couple of months has sort of hovered between 4.2 to 4.8, went up to 5, slipped back down, but we've been in sort of that neighborhood. By 2030, we have to create 155,000 net new jobs for Wake County, if you look at our growth rate. That's significant. We have an awful lot of work to do, but I will tell you that I am so thankful that I have people like John and Joe and Hardin and others to work with. It makes it far easier when you've got such tremendous partners. So I'm going to shush, and we'll get into the questions. But thank you again for having me.
All right. Great opening remarks. One of the things as an economic developer, we're always constantly trying to figure out what businesses want. We can't get them here to our community without understanding their needs. So my first question will come to you, Adrian. What are the primary drivers of companies considering relocating or expanding in Wake County?
Great, so I touched on one, talent. That's obviously a core strength of ours, and there really is a talent war going on throughout the country. Communities are catching on to this. They're positioning themselves to win the talent war out there. With our major colleges and universities here, we're in a great position. We also launched the Work in the Triangle initiative in 2011. If you've not been to workinthetriangle.com, I'd encourage you to do so. It is our talent recruitment and retention portal, if you will. We work not only with outreach and talking about what a great place this is to work and to relocate and to come to work for companies within our clusters. We also work within our industry clusters, so life sciences, information technology, advanced manufacturing, to understand and address the talent needs of those companies within those industry sectors, and then work to address those gaps, both with our partners locally as well as for our recruitment efforts. And then we work with individual companies to help them meet their talent needs by helping them host job fairs. We tweet out jobs every Tuesday on Triangle Tuesdays. So look at that, follow that. Every Tuesday you see our activities go whoop, because people are out there, job hunters are looking and see what companies are posting. I have a survey here from Area Development Magazine, and they surveyed corporate executives and site selection consultants. Over 95% of both groups cited availability of skilled labor as their #1 driver. Second is highway accessibility. So Garner's in a great place from that perspective. Labor costs rank high, state and local incentives rank high, available land ranks high. I will share that the work that we're doing around site development and shovel-ready sites is critical. Last year, only 4% of the companies that were considering Wake County wanted greenfield sites. This year, it's 22%. So through our Wake County Site Assessment Program, the work that Garner is doing on site assessment, we're better able to address that demand, and it's keeping us in the running for some of these projects.
Very good. Thank you, Adrian. All right. John, strong communities and strong economies do not just happen by themselves, they're planned. You mentioned planning for growth in your opening statement. What specifically is Garner doing to plan for this growth that we are talking about today?
All right, well, Garner, like most other communities, has some document, some guide that sets their mission and vision for growth. So we have a comprehensive plan like many other communities do. And that's really our vision, our long-range vision for land development, for redevelopment, for infrastructure development, and for community image. And we adopted our most recent comprehensive plan back in 2006. And when we did that, we expected it to guide our efforts through probably 2020 or beyond. But with all the changes that have been happening and all the new and exciting things that have been coming to Garner and all the things that are on the horizon, our staff and elected officials jointly decided this year that we really needed to start that comprehensive plan sooner than 2020. So our town council has enabled our staff to start working on a new comprehensive plan earlier than we had originally planned. And that's a good thing, because the earlier we can be ahead of the planning process, as I mentioned before, the better off we're going to be. So later this year, we'll be kicking off that initiative, and then in early 2016, we'll be actually starting the approximately 18-month process that it takes to put together a comprehensive plan. There's probably lots of people in the room who know completely what a comprehensive plan is and may look at them all the time in your line of work, but I have a feeling there's probably some people in the room that may not have ever looked at Garner or anyone else's comprehensive plan. So I challenge everybody today that if you're interested in the topic of growth and where our community is going, take a look at the comprehensive plan that we have now, and then get involved when we have an opportunity to invite citizens and others in to the comprehensive planning process. And again, you'll hear more about that in early 2016. At the same time, we will also start another process sooner than expected. We also have a transportation plan, not transit that we just talked about in terms of multimodal type transit, but our transportation plan that really plans our road network. And that plan was adopted in 2010. We expected that to probably last us for 10 or 15 years. But since we have many changes going on, like 540 and other things, we're going to do a refresh of that plan simultaneously with our comprehensive plan. So in about 18 months, we'll have a new comprehensive plan that guides our growth, as well as a refreshed transportation plan. And again, I would just ask that anyone who's not already familiar become familiar with that document, because there's going to be opportunities for everybody in this room to give some input and participation as we develop that plan.
Absolutely. Planning is very important, but so is recruitment. One of the cornerstones of economic development has been the ability for communities to reach out and recruit new companies to their communities. Adrian, what are our biggest challenges to recruitment, and what questions do you hear from most companies considering our area?
So we've already touched on a few of those, and many of them as a community we're working to address. So we hear questions certainly about availability of labor. We've talked a little bit about that. We've talked about the questions that we get about the availability of sites and buildings. We get questions about cost of doing business, housing costs. We get questions about incentives and incentive policies. We are hearing more often questions about transit and transportation and connectivity as our area grows. So it is certainly a topic that we need to continue to move forward with. And it helps when we're able to say we are working on a plan, which we are. And so we're able to direct them to the resources and to be able to demonstrate what we're considering as a community. We get questions about K through 12 education. We get questions about the Wake County school system, which is a very good school system. We have to work to help them understand how our school system works and how wonderful all the choices are. And once they sort of understand that, it's really seen as a benefit, but we work to help them understand those questions. So I think connectivity is going to continue to be an area of focus, both in terms of roads, like you were just mentioning, also transit, air service, fiber, other types of connectivity we need to continue to work on. Also quality of place. You know, Michael Porter says there is no global economy but a collection of local economies. And we're hearing more and more that companies are choosing places where they not only can make a really solid business case, but places where their employees want to live. And so quality of place, and culture, and a great quality of life, many of the things that Garner has to offer are a real asset. So I like to see some of the areas that could be seen as challenges as opportunities that we're working to address. And I'm proud of our community in that we are working to address them. But if we don't stay ahead of them, then they will become more in the challenge category. But we're very well positioned. We're very blessed.
All right, great news. John, you had talked about a couple industrial sites that have been getting a lot of attention here in Garner. I think many folks here may be familiar with the Garner Technology Center site as a former ConAgra site. However, can you tell us about the Garner Industrial Site that you mentioned?
Sure, Joe. The Garner Industrial Site is the sort of working name for a 150-acre tract of land along US 70 at the intersection of Rayner Road. It's just east of Greenfield Parkway and just contiguous to the Greenfield Business Park. And our town staff began working a few years ago to help the property owner remove some of the barriers for development in the future of that property. This year, we were very fortunate for Garner and this particular property to be entered into the Duke Energy Site Readiness Program. And this is a unique site preparation opportunity that we had where Duke Energy sponsors a site consulting firm, one of the leading ones in the country, to actually take this parcel and evaluate it the way they would if they were doing it for one of their multinational firms that they were helping to find a location. So we were the beneficiaries of an awful lot of work that went into helping us assess this site. A lot of work that we also contributed and put into it, and so did the property owner. It was a process that began back in the spring and just wrapped up late last month. Some of you in the room attended a presentation we had from the consulting firm. And we're real pleased to say that we got a pretty good report card at the end of that and got good results back that this site is pretty well along in its preparedness to be redeveloped. But it does give some valuable information for the developer, for the future developer, for the property owner, and for us as economic developers to know what the opportunities are and the challenges are with the property. The other real big thing that's a benefit of this program is this property is now in Duke Energy's economic development team's portfolio of properties that they're out marketing on our behalf every day when they're around the country. So it's not only technical information, but it's a huge asset to us in terms of marketing Garner and marketing this particular site. So we are very fortunate to be in that site selection or that site evaluation program this year. I know there's folks from Duke Energy in the audience, so we want to say thank you, even though you may work in a different part of the organization. So thank you to Duke Energy for including Garner in that, and a special thank you to Adrienne and her staff and Wake County Economic Development for sponsoring us, being in that program, and also helping us a great deal with the work that went into preparing for that. Thank you, Adrienne.
Oh, absolutely. It's a great program. Thanks, Duke.
And it is intense.
It is
Let me just say
intense.
that. It is an
It's no
intense
joke, no
process. One thing economic developers would love to have is a crystal ball to tell you all what the future might hold, but unfortunately I don't have one in my office yet, and we'll put it in the budget for next year. But Adrienne, reading the tea leaves, what do you notice about trends in economic development, and how do you think they'll affect Garner?
Well, I already mentioned one, so we're seeing a significant uptick in the number of companies that are looking for sites. So I mentioned 4% last year, 22% this year. That's significant. I will tell you that we have, let me turn the page, 48 active projects. If they were to all come, which they won't, it would equal 12,433 jobs and $3.8 billion in investment. 21% are in software IT, 29% are in life sciences, so that is a trend that we have seen on a steady increase, are the life sciences companies considering our area. I will tell you, we are competing for those companies globally. When we are competing for a life sciences project, we are typically competing with another state, so Massachusetts very often is in the mix, and very often we're competing with Denmark or Switzerland or the Netherlands, and so they are very competitive projects, but we are seeing a lot of those. They tend to be good job generators and good investment generators, which is great for our community in terms of tax base and being able to provide money to provide all the other services that our local governments have to provide. So we are seeing a trend where we've got an uptick in life sciences projects. We're also seeing some trending around advanced manufacturing. So we're seeing more and more of those advanced manufacturing projects. So 34% of our current activity are in the advanced manufacturing space. I'll say another trend that we're seeing that we also are strong in this region is convergence. So, the Internet of Things. Who knows what that means when I say the Internet of Things? Can I see a show of hands? I see some. Robert knows. I saw that over there. So it's, how the Internet and smart technology is converging with like wearable devices, for example, is an Internet of Things technology. But there's convergence between technology and medical healthcare in Internet of Things. We are a leader in that space, in this region. So I think that will be an emerging trend as we go forward in an area where we where we are and will be stronger. We are also a leader in data and data analytics. Not only do we have companies like SAS here, but we have companies like MetLife or Biogen that are putting major data centers, their global data centers here. Not data centers as in the big data farms, but their data analytics groups are here. And so we're seeing some trends in that area. Clean tech also is an area that we are growing in. And what's exciting about clean tech is it's not only an opportunity for urban areas, but it's also a great opportunity for rural areas. So throughout the Research Triangle region, which is a 15-county region, we have clean tech projects in every single county. That's exciting for us in terms of economic development opportunities throughout the state. So those are just some of the trends that I am seeing emerge that I think Garner's well positioned for, I think our region is well positioned for, I think North Carolina is well positioned for, but we have to have all the puzzle pieces to be competitive. And so that is available land, it's talent, it's quality of place, it's a reasonable cost structure, it's incentives. We've got to be able to put all the pieces of the puzzle together to win. And that requires a lot of teamwork, back to my teamwork analogy.
All right, folks.
Let's give them a standing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so stand up, and if you need a break, but we're going to keep on going with our program. So next up is Melissa Oliver with YMCA to introduce our next session and also to give us a YMCA update. You have to hold this.
How many of you have heard that we're going to be building a YMCA in Garner? Raise your hand. Yeah. I have 1 minute just to give you an update. And when I was thinking about what I would say in 1 minute, the thing that most think of is how grateful we are for the incredible support that Garner has given us. We are currently at $5.8 million into our goal of $7 million. So can we clap for that? You know, just a couple years ago, we did a feasibility study and asked Garner, number one, do we need a Y? Do you want a Y? And then also, will Garner support it? And you've shown in true Garner fashion that you stick to your word, because you said yes to both of those, and we are just making tremendous progress. And I'm not doing my job if I don't ask you to help us get to the finish line so we can break ground early next year. So we just have $1.2 million to go, and I know that we're going to get there. So please help us if you feel led to do that. We would really appreciate it. I have the pleasure of introducing our next speaker. Hold this. Let's see, where is it? Hold on. Is it in here? Thank you. Our next session is about our schools. We at the Y partner with our Garner schools. We know that our schools are critical to our youth, our community, and economic development. We thank Julie Hoyes, Executive Director with Sylvan Learning, for helping us with our session on schools. She is the Executive Director of the Sylvan Learning Centers in Garner, Knightdale, Raleigh, and Wake Forest. She's a graduate of Appalachian State University and former Wake County Public School System teacher and student. She joined the Sylvan team in 2003, and in 2013, Julie was awarded the Sylvan Way Award for providing exceptional service. Julie is on the board of the Garner Education Foundation. Please help me welcome Julie.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for the introduction. I'm really excited to be here today. And it's my pleasure now that I get to introduce the three panelists for this next session on 21st century schools in Garner. Drew Cook, as most everyone in the room probably already knows, he is the former principal of Garner High School, where he was there for 17 years, 5 of which as principal. And now he is the Senior Director of High School Programs with Wake County Public School System. He graduated from UNCW with an undergrad in political science and got his master's in public administration, or excuse me, school administration from NC State. And in 2011, you won the Principal of the Year award for Wake County. And in 2012, you also won the North Carolina Principal of the Year award. So congratulations for this. And now also have Christine Kushner, and she is the chair of Wake County Board of Education. She is a Moorhead Scholar from UNC and received your master's in public affairs from Princeton. I understand that you love chocolate and coffee as well. Christine is a professional policy analyst and freelance writer, and is of Greek descent. So we're excited to have Christine. And then we also have Betty Parker, who's the Senior Director of Planning and Construction for Wake County Public School System. Betty is a Raleigh native and a product of her school system. She graduated from Atlantic Christian College and the Wake Forest University School of Law. She's also a licensed attorney, and Betty's a real estate broker and has been with the school system for nearly 10 years. So welcome to these three panelists. If everyone could give them a round of applause. And now I'm going to turn it over to Drew Cook.
Thank you, Julie. First of all, it's great to always be back in Garner. It's hard to believe, Neil, but it was 3 years ago that I think I spoke at this same event. In fact, I've got that PowerPoint pulled up right here for reference if I need to in just a little bit. But it's truly an honor to be here, and I know I speak on behalf of all of us, Ms. Kushner and Ms. Parker, to be invited. Certainly, you know, I knew from a distance both of Ms. Kushner and Ms. Parker were true professionals, competent, hardworking, passionate educators who have the best interests of our kids at heart, and I've certainly learned that even more so in the past 10 months in my new role. So I'm honored and humbled to be at this event with them. So first and foremost, let me just say to my friend Mr. Jackson back there, I've got to say thanks a lot. I wasn't nervous until I sat next to you and you said something about good luck and hope everything goes well. So I think things will go very, very well. I think you'll see myself and Ms. Kushner and Ms. Parker, we're here to share with you some information, both what we know and as far as data goes and the direction of the school system, and also plans for the future. And we'll talk a little bit about that. I think what I'm going to try to do is dig into a little bit of data and give you an overview. Some things you probably know. Some of the data that I'll just touch on briefly, you can pick up the paper and see. Public-facing information that's easy to look at as far as a letter grade or a number that gets assigned to our schools, which I'm very, very well aware, right or wrong, the fact of the matter is that number or that letter sometimes is as deep as the public might go in making a quick decision about what's a good school and what's not a good school. And I'll expand on that a little bit. I've experienced that as a principal. I'll talk about that as a teacher, as an administrator. I think most of you know, not only did I work at Garner High School for 18 years, I was also a graduate of Garner High School, and I'm a product myself of Garner schools. So I'm here, I think, it's safe to say, both personally and professionally, which is probably why Dr. Merrill saw fit for me to be up here on this panel today. But we do want to provide you with some information and give you that overview. We'll talk some about spending and investment. We'll talk about building and construction. Just by a show of hands, how many folks did the bus tour today and saw South Garner High School? Was that not incredible? How much work's been done in the last 8 or 9 months? I was joking with the mayor. Please know that it's no reflection on the district's priorities that the only green grass that's out there right now is on the football field. That's purely coincidental, Mr. Mayor. That grass has to take root so those kids can play on it starting next summer. And the lights were up on the football field as well. Totally not a symbolic mechanism to say where our priorities are within the district. But you got a sense to see the direction the district is heading. And I think 2 years ago, and we'll reference the bond referendum and some of the work. I mean, the fact of the matter is we're seeing some progress as a result of that bond, and we'll talk about that some today as well. So, and of course, we'll try to leave some time for some questions from Julie at the end. So what I'll do is just kind of jump in, talk a little bit about something that's near and dear to my heart. As a principal and a teacher, we live with data. And, you know, let's start by talking about Garner in comparison with the rest of Wake County and the rest of the state. As I said, as a principal at Garner, I've got to tell you, when somebody would ask me where I would work, and I would say Garner High School with a big smile on my face, it was 50-50 sometimes, depending upon what reaction that I might get. And I think most of you, I see heads nodding because you know what I'm referencing. And it was kind of this initial, ooh, Garner. And of course, I'm like, yeah, Garner. But there was, and still is to some degree, I think we all recognize a perception about our schools that is not always reality. And what I'll do is talk a little bit about the data that's very public, that creates some of that perception, and then try to dig a little bit deeper and show some data points that certainly internally, and hopefully increasingly externally, we begin to push out to paint a better, more accurate picture of what's going on truly in all of our schools, not just in Garner, but across the district. So, before I get to this slide and try to define for you some of these terms and what they mean, let's start with the obvious, okay? So if we just take the 11 Garner area schools, and I pick up the paper, I think it was last February, sometime in that time frame, when the state published their school report card grades. For the first time in our state, we published a grade with a letter attached to a school's name, right? Just looking through Garner, I see, if I did my math correctly, 2 Ds, 8 Cs, and 1 B. I won't mention that the 1B just happened to be at Garner High School. Not that I'm bragging, but I kind of am. And the fact of the matter is we see that breakdown. And so immediately, as any educator would, any parent would, I don't think for my own child that that would be an acceptable report card, right? I mean, the fact 2 Ds, 8 Cs, and a B. It's not woeful. You know, it's not as bad as it could be, perhaps. But the fact of the matter is, at least on the surface, the appearance is created that something is not right or our kids are not performing at the level that they should be. And so what I would say is we've got to dig a little bit deeper, number one. We've also got to take a look at what that data means and how it's arrived at, because it's absolutely vital. I have talked to many realtors in this room and many business people in this room who've reminded me as a principal at Garner more times than not that the name of the town is on the front of that school, and like it or not, economic development in this community is directly tied, right, to the success of that school and any school within our district and within the town. And so we recognize that and we own that. And we have a collective responsibility to make sure that our kids are getting the best education they possibly can, but we also have a responsibility to make sure that our public in our community is getting good information. And that's part of my goal in the next few minutes with you today. Just a couple of things. So that quick breakdown that I gave you doesn't sound great, right? You know, the fact of the matter is, and not that I want to draw attention to it, but across Wake County, I think we had 19 schools that had Ds, no Fs. Fortunately, lots of districts across the state did have Fs. So when you think about that, 2 of those Ds came from schools in the Garner area. There were 17 other Ds in Wake County outside of Garner. And of course, I've learned a little bit about my perspective has broadened from one high school and being responsible there to now being responsible for 28 high schools across the district. Just to kind of give you some context and perspective. So we can spin that data pretty much however we want to. I could say to you, well, 9 out of 11 Garner schools had a grade of C or above. Roughly, I think 81% of our schools have at least a C. And then I can share with you that's actually above the state average, where 75% of the schools across the state had a C or above. But if we dig a little bit deeper, then you can look at the breakdown between A's, B's, and C's and compare that to Wake County. So once again, you can spin it whatever way you want to. The fact of the matter is, and I hate to wax political and share personal opinion, the fact of the matter is we do have issues with how we're reporting success of our schools, and it does have an impact on communities and economic development. I would argue that the way that we calculate that performance grade for high schools is actually a more accurate representation, ironically, than it is for our K through 8 schools. And just to give you a little bit of information and clarity, essentially there's one measure that's used to calculate a performance grade at an elementary or middle school, and it's an end of grade assessment, grades 3 through 8. 80% of that is proficiency, the percentage of students at that school that are at grade level. 20% of that grade is the growth score, which is essentially a measure statistically of how much a student knew when they walked in the door and how much they knew when they walked out the door, or what they should have learned based on past testing performance and statewide data. High schools actually have a much broader measure, and there are more factors involved. Graduation rate, in addition to EOC scores, both growth and proficiency. The percentage of students in a high school that take upper-level math courses, math course rigor, ACT composite data. So there's a myriad of information that provides a very, very clear picture of what a successful school, or for that matter, a struggling school, looks like. So one of the things that, right or wrong, good or bad, fair or not, the fact of the matter is that's the system that we've got to work within. And I'm kind of old school in some regards. There's a reason that I was a principal. I believe very, very strongly, as our district does, in the importance of accountability. We have to keep our teachers and keep our schools and our principals and our district accountable for the results that we get. And so there is value in that grade. But there's also value in making sure that the grade is truly reflective and representative of the learning that's taking place in a school building. And so down the road, I would love to see, just as an aside, a grading system that maybe is more aligned with the kinds of mechanisms that are used at the high school level pushed down to our elementary level. Obviously, you're not going to have graduation rates and ACT scores, but it could be teacher working conditions survey data and other information, teacher effectiveness data, maybe a 50-50 breakdown between growth and proficiency. So all that said, the fact of the matter is the grades are still in the paper and those scores are still there. So I want to share with you briefly some other indicators that we use as a district to take a look at and pull back the layers to see what's really going on in our schools and where Garner falls in that as a community with those 11 schools. The slide that you see, just to kind of give you an idea, and I don't want to define terms too much, and I'm trying to read in the very, very back, so forgive me, I've got my glasses on. What you're seeing here is a set of teacher evaluation standards and the percentage of teachers, both in North Carolina and in the Garner area schools, that were rated on each of the 6 professional standards. Just very quickly, standard 1 that you see is leadership, 2 is establishing a respectful environment, 3 is content knowledge, 4 is facilitating learning, 5 is professional development and reflection, and 6 is the actual growth data. So one of the things that we look for in Wake County is we compare how our teachers are being rated by principals and by assistant principals in these standards. Just real quickly, the scorecard, it goes from not demonstrated on one end up through developing, proficient, and then what you're seeing there are the percentage of accomplished and distinguished. Essentially teachers that are going well above and beyond what would be expected of them professionally based on those North Carolina evaluation standards. This is important because it's a key indicator. It's a key indicator in a window of the culture of a school and even drilling down to an individual classroom. And what you can see based on that data is that our teachers are performing very, very well in comparison with their peers across the state. We want to go to the next slide real quickly. And again, I'm trying to provide some information that maybe goes beyond just a grade, because I know one of the things in talking with many of you is you want data, you need information and an explanation about where the data comes from and what it means. So here's one that's near and dear to my heart. The fact of the matter is graduation rates are critical in evaluating the effectiveness of our schools. And even though, as a high school principal and now as a senior director for high school programs, I feel accountable at Garner High School. I felt accountable individually for our graduation rate. I mean, the fact of the matter was, right next to Garner, my name appeared as the principal in the paper. And so it was personal. And to some degree, it's the same case now, right? There's 28 high schools in Wake County, and that data is reflective of the work that's going on in our high schools. I would point out, though, that graduation rates are also measurables and indicators of the effectiveness of K-12 education, right? And so as much as I would like to individually take credit, or the faculty at Garner High School would like to take credit for the gap that you see that has shrunk in the grad rate, to the point in 2014 where Garner High School's graduation rate actually exceeded the Wake County district average and was slightly below the state average, which, by the way, is a point of contention right now as a district. We certainly want to see our district's graduation rate exceed, once again, the state average. But the point is, it's not just a high school measurable, right? This is a measurable of the effectiveness of all of our schools from the time that a student walks into kindergarten all the way through the 12th grade, even though it's a measure of whether or not they graduate in 4 years walking in the 9th grade. Another piece of information that I would share with you, just in total transparency, before we get to this next slide, if we'll go back to the graduation rate slide. I used to make clear to the faculty that we could raise the graduation rate to 100% tomorrow, right? Anybody have an idea how we could do that? Lower standards and pass everybody. Boom, magic, 100% grad rate. Pat ourselves on the back, give ourselves a pay raise, and wave off into the sunset. And so I was very, very conscientious, as our district is now and as our principals are now, about making sure we're maintaining high standards. And I know Ms. Kushner in a few minutes is going to talk about the strategic plan as we close out, and that new goal of 95% graduation rate by 2020, but there's a key phrase there, and it's 95% graduating on time, college and career ready, right? Because conceivably anybody could pass a student on and lower their standards. And so in addition to this, we would pay very close attention to things like college-going rate at the high school. We would pay attention to things like scholarship dollars earned. Because that's a good measure of how academically competitive our kids were as they left us and moved on to post-secondary education. So for example, just to give you an indication, in the class of 2014, when you see that rate close the state and the county gap, Garner High School had, in that senior class, those students earned $5 million worth of scholarships. $5 million. Now that means nothing. I mean, I could have said 50 million or 50,000, and that sounds like a good number either way. Just for some context, though, and to kind of prove the point about keeping standards high and where kids are going after they left with a diploma from the high school, 4 years before, in 2010, that number was 1.7 million. So it went from 1.7 million to over 5 million within one 4-year cycle, which is a very, very strong indicator, of course, about where those kids were going and how competitive they were with their peers across Wake County and across the state. So I think that's important to point out as well. So we can move to the next slide as well. And I think I could talk all day about some of this data. I've got about 10 or 12 minutes to get you as much information as I can. So in addition to the graduation rate, and I alluded to it before, so let's talk about test scores. Unfortunately, one of the things that the public doesn't often get to see is the growth component. The most forward-facing measure that we have, and it's an important measure, don't get me wrong. It's important to know how many students in your building are at, below, or above grade level, which is essentially what proficiency is telling us. It's absolutely vital. But another component when measuring how effective a school or a teacher is in actually teaching students additional information, essentially how much they learned compared to what their peers were expected to learn in a subject area or in a grade level across the state, that's absolutely vital as well. And so one of the things that we did at Garner High School was try to make sure that our teachers, that our students, that our community, that our parents understood the other side of what test scores also measure. And so what you see, and it's kind of a complex chart, is where Garner High School ranked in 2014 compared to 400 plus other high schools across the state when it came to the growth component. And I didn't know this, by the way, just until a couple of weeks. I didn't know that number until I was in this position just a few weeks ago, which I think actually speaks to the importance of making sure this information gets out. Because if I didn't know it as the principal, then how could we expect our public and our community to know that Garner High School was ranked number 24 out of more than 400 high schools in the state as far as the effectiveness of their teachers in ensuring the students in their classrooms were learning and growing. Wherever they were when they walked in the door, that is a reflection of how much they grew and learned in comparison with what was statistically expected based on their peers' performance across the state. And so that little line that you see is actually a series of points on a graph, each one representing a school. And so you see where Garner falls there. And by the way, it was even better than this in 2013. And I know that in 2013, Garner High School, out of 166 schools in Wake County at the time, was actually number 4 out of 166 when it came to growth. Number 1 among high schools. That's the kind of vital information that I think a lot of times, unfortunately, remains internal and is not as external as it should be. And part of the reason I'm sharing this is not to gloss over the fact that there are there's some growth to be desired when it comes to test scores and student performance in the town and in our schools. But the fact of the matter is, sometimes perception is reality, and that works both ways. And I say that because as a principal at Garner High School in 2008, 2009, just starting out, I share with you that perception that sometimes our public had about my school at the time, that I took so much pride in. And the reality was, I felt like we had to constantly make sure people understood all these other measurables that were really, in my view, reflective of the good school that we already had. And by the way, that also included parents. I've rarely come across a parent today that had a kid go through Garner High School that was disappointed with their experience. And we knew and we recognized that if one person came, their neighbor would come. And if that neighbor came, the neighborhood would come. And so it's very, very important, notwithstanding the public-facing performance grade, which is important, but it's also important to make sure that your neighbors and your business associates and your fellow realtors know and understand there's some unbelievably amazing work that's going on within our schools inside the town of Garner and the surrounding areas. And so I hope this data kind of paints that picture a little bit for you. I think, quite frankly, one of the things that we can do a better job of as everybody in this room is make sure we're getting this word out. And that kind of actually segues, I think, into our next segment when it comes to truly celebrating the good things that are going on. And don't misunderstand me. And I think, in summation, if somebody had to pin me down and ask me to give an explanation of where we stack up, I mean, that's the reason we were invited here. Why, where does Garner Schools stack up in comparison with the state and with the district? And what I would say, and I want to be careful how I phrase this, I would say not as good as we should be, better than some think we are, and definitely not as good as we're going to be. And I think that, in summation, is the attitude and the mindset of the school district. And I know Ms. Kushner's going to talk more, and Ms. Parker's going to talk more about the investment in the schools from a facility standpoint, and some of the specific measures, because the next question you're left with is, okay, so what do we do about it? What next? And I can tell you one of the things that Ms. Kushner will talk about at a high level is the strategic plan. And for example, more than I've ever seen in my 18 years in the school district, a targeted effort to go after students that are not performing at the level they should be. And I can give you an example right now within the high school programs team. We're looking at all the data and then some of what I just shared with you to identify among our 28 high schools, for example, where the priorities are. And there is a concerted effort as a result of this strategic plan. Again, this is an example of what next and what do we do about it. It's an example within the strategic plan of tiering our resources and support. So gone are the days where we just kind of formulate an overall formula and pass out resources, months of employment, dollars, new facilities, et cetera. And there's actually a concerted effort now moving forward to tier those resources. And it stands to reason, right? I mean, if we've got more kids in a specific school that aren't learning and aren't performing at a high level, we want to provide that school with additional resources, support, months of employment, whatever it takes to help bring those students back up to a basic level of proficiency. But I really think a lot of that starts with how we're communicating to our public, how we're talking and what we're talking about with our fellow neighbors, with our peers. Everything matters. And one thing that I know and learn firsthand is that success absolutely breeds more success. It's true in athletics, and it's absolutely true in academics. And if sometimes you have to dig a little deeper to show the positive data that's out there, if you do that well enough and consistently enough, all the data points, even the soul-facing data points like a letter grade, will soon catch up to the other things that we know are happening and happening at a high level in our schools. So I know my time is up, so I'll let Julie move on to the next segment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Drew. I think the data that Drew presented just speaks volumes about the growth that the Garner schools have made so far, and even more so about what's going to happen in the future. You had mentioned, about the different ways to measure schools, and when it comes to celebrations, I know that a lot of other schools in Wake County have received, accolades for a lot of different things. Christine, I understand that you've done some research and you've got some things to report for us on celebrations for our schools in Garner.
That's right, I have a great job today. I get to talk about the strategic plan what Ms. Parker has done, but right now I'm going to with this lovely child, I think was going to be the next slide, get to read for you accolades from the Garner public schools that are part of the Wake County public school system. So I thank you for having us today, and I couldn't bring a more authentic and passionate voice about Garner schools with us today than having Drew Cook here. So I'm so glad and thankful that Mr. Cook is here. So first, at East Garner Middle School, which is the photo you see today is up there is a young lady who's part of their IB program, which is International Baccalaureate. It's a very rigorous K-12 curriculum that Garner has through Smith, East Garner, and
Garner Magnet High School. So the IB curriculum is at East Garner Middle School, and East Garner received the National Magnet School of Distinction Award for its IB program and Creative Arts program. Smith Elementary is a National Magnet School of Distinction for their IB program. Its academic growth exceeds the state average and meets district average. It had a 13.3 percentage point jump in grade 3 reading last year in 2014, and a 6.6 percentage point jump in math scores in grade 3. So exceptional growth at Smith Elementary. It's one of 12 schools that are currently receiving additional resources through the Wake County Public School System's elementary support model. So great things to come at Smith. It also partners with Aversboro Elementary to offer Chinese in grades 3 through 5. I want to show of hands how many folks knew we were teaching Chinese in our elementary schools here in Garner. Timber Drive, Mr. Cook. Timber Drive Elementary had an Assistant Principal of the Year finalist, and in 2014 was awarded a Teacher Innovation Grant from the Wake Ed Partnership. Aversboro Elementary is the other that's teaching Chinese in grades 3 through 5, partnering with Smith. Its academic growth exceeds the district average. It is a STEM school, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It is a member of that STEM collaborative network that we have here in Wake County. Last year, for the first time, it offered a Lego special class to teach critical thinking and writing skills, and we'll talk a bit more about that in our strategic plan. It's going to be, those are very key skills that we're focused on. Last year, Aversboro had a significant increase in parent involvement using STEM and literacy nights to bring parents into the school. Rand Road Elementary School, one of the single-track year-round schools we have here in Garner, along with Timber Drive. Its school proficiency exceeds the Wake County Public School System average. Vandora Springs, its academic growth exceeds state and district averages. In 2014-15, it had a Teacher of the Year semi-finalist. It received a Coles grant that provided funding and volunteers that Coles comes and helps in the school. And Vandora Springs last year holds two fundraisers every year that many of you may know about. It gives back to the Garner community with the Empty Bowl Project and the Chairs of Hope Project. Students design bowls and chairs, and the funds go to the ministries here in Garner and to the Garner Relay for Life. The next slide is showing a proud graduate with a parent at Garner Magnet Senior High School. As you well know, Garner High School had the 4A boys basketball state championships. And as modeled by Mr. Cook. As Mr. Cook also said, it's 526 seniors had $5 million in scholarships. It is a magnet school of distinction on the national level, a National Magnet School of Distinction for its exceptional IB program. And I think has had a record number of IB diploma graduates, which is a very rigorous course of study for those seniors. Its academic growth exceeds both state and district averages. In 2014, it had a Teacher Innovation Grant from the Wake Ed Partnership. It is also one of 10 high schools nationally that won a National Association of Secondary School Principals Breakthrough School Award. That is an award that goes to schools that serve all of their students, particularly high-needs students. It is one of 10 high schools nationally that received that award. Its 2014 graduation rate of 83.5% was the highest in the school's history and is above the district average. And it continues for the third consecutive year. It had, in 2014, a bronze medal winner in the U.S. News and World Report's annual rankings of national top high schools in the nation. Garner Magnet High School is indeed, I think, a jewel for Garner. And having a strong high school, and soon you'll get word on having a second strong high school, truly, I believe, is critical to economic development in the community. So we couldn't be prouder of the Trojans from Garner High School. North Garner Middle School is the other, is a single-track year-round school that supports the calendar continuity for the elementary schools, Timber Drive and Rand Road, that are also single-track. They had two 2014 Teacher Innovation Grant winners from Wake Ed Partnership. They had in 2015-16 the Teacher of the Year semi-finalist. And last year it had a 6.2 percentage point gain in proficiency and had improved proficiency across all subjects. 99% of the students at North Garner Middle School met proficiency in Common Core Math 1. and they have experienced gains in proficiency in college and career readiness pathways. Creech Road Elementary is one of the 3 Wake County schools awarded a $1.1 million grant to increase counseling services. That's going to be something I know that we're working with the county to closely increase counseling and other support services for our students. And Creech Road is also one of the 12 schools receiving additional resources through the Wake County Elementary Support Model. East Garner Elementary School is another one of our 12 schools in the elementary support model that we're pioneering district-wide, and academic growth at East Garner Elementary exceeds the state and the district average. That's a very long list, but I thought it was an important list for me to bring to you today. We even left some things off the list. There was so much to talk about with strengths in Garner schools, but I think it's important to press the point that it's not only important and marvelous to support the athletic accomplishments of our students here in Garner, especially for those Garner High School students who celebrated their state honors. But what I would like the community in Wake County to do is lift up the very strong academic gains that we have here in Garner. And after Ms. Parker's presentation, I'll be talking more about how we're working to do that in our strategic plan.
Thank you so much, Christine. There's definitely a lot of accomplishments Garner schools can be proud of, so thank you. Now, Betty, I know that you have some thoughts to share with us about the new construction and renovation in this area of the county, because that continues to be a hot topic from Van Dorn Springs to Garner High School. So if you could talk about that for a few minutes.
Thank you. I'm Betty Parker, I'm Real Estate Services Director. I come to this discussion on the very ground level. My role starts with site acquisition, and I work closely with the construction folks all the way through up to our joint use of schools. I was a graduate of Broughton High School, and today and only today, I'm pleased to have contributed to the success of Garner's athletic prowess. Were it not for the Broughton High Schools of the world, your record might not be as good, but we provided a lot of opportunities for success. While I was there.
It's good practice.
We will not speak of this again. The first thing that I wanted to mention is that from my role, I have the privilege of working closely with your staffs, occasionally with your officials, but mostly with your staffs and economic development directors. You have fabulous staff in Garner. The realty community, I see John back there, the realty community is always willing to reach out and help. I get a lot of help in trying to locate sites. It is much appreciated. But it creates a network of collaboration that I think has gotten us further than we would have been without it. So I'm in tune to your interest in learning about where we are and how we're moving along. Before we get to a specific site, I want to give you a few big picture pieces. The screen you see there are our planning regions. So for purposes of planning, Garner falls in the southeast region, which is the region outlined there on the southeast. Garner schools dominate the discussion of our new facilities and the southeast region planning. This slide will give you an idea of the boundaries of where this region lies, so as I mention it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But on the next slide, you'll see in our current building program, CIP 2013, 23% of the $850 million bond that voters approved is designated for new schools and renovations in Garner. Put another way, although the planning region ranks 7th out of 10 in growth, it's first in investment per student. So a lot of investment is being made in Garner out of this current bond. The next slide will give you more of an historic picture. From 2000, we've had 4 bond programs, one in 2000, 2004, 2006, and 2013. During this period, this planning region has ranked 3rd out of 10, while ranking 7th in overall growth. So again, investment has outpaced growth, but in another way, facility investments in Garner per pupil have continued to outpace most of the county. Now that doesn't mean that all the projects that we built have been easy or quick. They don't always come as quickly as we would like. And probably the best example of that is Mr. Cook's Garner High School. The renovation there is desperately needed, but I think you're going to be pleased with the result. On the next slide, you'll see an aerial of Garner High School. You'll see a yellow outline. It's not as clear as I would love for it to be, but our renovation takes place in two ways. There are a number of the more recently built buildings that will be renovated and brought up to speed. And then the area outlined in yellow will be demolished to make way for new construction. As you can see, it's not all the buildings on one side or the other. It weaves in and out of the buildings, which makes those fairly complex projects. Now, the site plan that you see on the next slide is the plan that will be utilized in this renovation. So in addition to the building, we're not merely renovating the building, we're also renovating a substantial amount of the site. No one's touching the athletic fields. But you're going to see significant improvements in traffic circulation, both off and on the site. You're going to see more parking. You're going to see better parking locations. You'll see a very large parking lot beside the school on the west that provides terrific access for events. It's not only near the entryway to the fields, but in the new school layout, it's right by the main entrance to the auditorium and to the main gymnasium area. So it also gives you an ability to route out of there fairly quickly, so traffic flow should be much improved as well. The next slide gives you a set of elevations. This is the architect's depiction of what they anticipate the school will look like from 4 different vantage points. Probably the main thing here is that the facade is broken up by color, by texture, by window size and type, and by the planes of the building. That is, some parts are set back and some are set up, so that it has some visual interest. The next slide, of course, brings it into focus. That's a 3-dimensional view that's been created. As you can see, that would be the main entrance, and that's going to be a 3-story classroom wing. So we're very excited about how this is really going to revitalize this campus and breathe new life into this particular school. Now, Garner's been a long time coming, and the scope is a little more than we originally planned, and it's not the only school to have that happen. Vandora Springs is another one. Here's the aerial of Vandora Springs, and similarly to Garner, we have a building that we're keeping and renovating, and then a set of buildings that we're going to be demolishing. The white rooftop you see is currently a pre-K space. That's the part that's being kept. All of the rest of it is being demolished. We would have liked to have saved more, but between the time of our initial planning and final planning, we realized the condition of the buildings was different than expected, and as we looked at our site renovations, it simply wasn't the best way to do it, and we wanted to do it right. The other aspect of this is that anytime you have a renovation of a site with children on it, you've got to find the most effective way to maintain an effective learning environment for them. We originally planned to bring some modular units on the campus so the students could move into that. We call it a swing space. So if the students could swing into the modulars on campus, we would be able to do a phased renovation a bit at a time. It takes longer, saves money, kids are on the same campus, but it's not the best educational environment. And if they're going to be successful at the high school, they have to be successful by the 3rd grade. So it simply wasn't acceptable. So our determination to do it right is part of what's caused the hitch in Vandora's schedule that you're probably most familiar with. Let's go to the next slide where we show the schematic design. We are still in design on this. The site plan is fairly well set. So much like Garner High, you'll see improvements on site circulation, both on-site and off-site. The building footprint is fairly set, but I think you'll see the wing on the right swing just a little bit. We're finalizing that now, and the final designs will soon be going to our board for approval. Now, it's a little bit of a trade-off doing this design than the one we originally thought, but we absolutely think it's worth it. On the next slide, you'll see some of the key points that we considered. And I apologize for the font size. But the benefits of the project for Vandora, we're improving the size of the building. We're improving the flow of the building. We're preparing it for 21st century learning. It'll have greater safety and security, a larger multi-purpose dining room combination, which is our current standard. We could not have delivered that in the old model that we were initially considering. And of course, it gets a larger media center. So the benefit of this particular design that demolishes more space are pretty clear. So the drawbacks, had we gone with the initial one, have to do with the on-site swing space utilization. So on the next slide, the challenges that we faced under that plan have students and teachers too close to construction. There are going to be disruptions. there were situations where students would leave one space, have to walk outside through a staging area to get to their next teaching space. It's just simply not good enough. And of course, while construction is underway during the school year, you have parent traffic, bus traffic, and construction traffic all fighting one another. So for Vandora, these risks were just not worth taking. So instead, we're looking towards utilizing a swing space decision that uses the new Bryan Road Elementary School. So the benefit there is that we can temporarily relocate the Vandora Springs students there for 1 year. Had they remained on campus, it would have been more like 2 years in a construction zone. So for the students of Vandora, they'll be swinging into a brand new elementary school for 1 year, and then they'll return to a brand new elementary school. So they'll be out of the construction space. It'll provide the best opportunity for learning and teaching with the least disruption of that process. And interestingly enough, with the timelines, as you'll see in a minute, there's no difference in when the schools are complete. So on the next slide, you'll see the timelines. And again, Garner High School has had a little bit of a pushback on their timeline as well in terms of swing space. We initially planned to have Garner swing into South Garner for 1 year while we began the project on site. We would have them return to the site and we could finish construction while we were there. With the same thing that happened to Vandora, it happened with our Garner High School planning. Once we realized more buildings had to be demolished than initially planned, we realized there was just not enough space to be able to do a swing space on campus scenario. So the best thing to do there is for us to allow them to stay at South Garner for that 2nd year. That allows Garner High School to be renovated without the students on campus. So while they're in a brand new high school, a good educational learning environment, we can renovate Garner High School as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So we save time, we save money, but we save the learning environment, and that's what's priceless. A couple of years out of the student's educational career is a long time to be subject to so many disruptions. So here it just gives you the idea that we had originally planned to swing Garner High School into South Garner from 2016 to 2017, and then they would return, and their school would be finished a year after that. Now we're planning on moving them into South Garner for 2016-17 and 17-18, and in 2018 they would return to the fully renovated Garner High School. So again, it keeps the students in the program and all the athletic events and everyone else who has to drive to the school out of the construction zone. The next slide has the same comparison for Vandora Springs. We had originally had, and boy, my eyes aren't that good. Originally, Vandora Springs was going to be in swing space on campus. We would be moving the modulars on in 2016, and we would have finished in December of 18, so mid-year, December of 18. Now, the Bryan Road Elementary School is slated to be complete in 2017. So for the 2017-18 year, the Vandora Springs students could swing into Bryan Road, and when they come out for the 2018 year, they'll be moving back into a brand new school. So that, I think, addresses some of the questions that I expect that we'll see about that on the timing. Interesting that although we're starting construction much later, we're actually finishing earlier, in time for the regular beginning of the 18 year in August. Not mid-year, but in August. So we'll start later, finish sooner. I wish my work day was like that. One of the advantages, and I didn't put this on a slide, but one of the advantages to me in these swing space patterns, if the Garner High School students have an opportunity to swing into the new South Garner High School, the community gets a chance to see the facility, become acquainted with it, embrace it, so that you'll have more knowledge about this new school than if you were sending a kid off there for the very first time as a new school. So the entire community will have an opportunity to become familiar with it, and we think it's going to be a source of great pride. From the show of hands and from the reactions I've heard, I think the bus tour went well as to how amazing that site's going to be. Similarly with Vandora Springs, it'll give Bryan Road a chance to get some exposure to the community before it starts its own community. And turning now then to the last couple of slides, I've got a couple of slides for the new South Garner site. here again, you've got similar to Garner High School, we're fortunate that we have roadways on 3 sides of the site. So it helps us to start out with good access, start out with good parking. We've got the full complement of fields and exterior spaces that go along with any high school. That happens and your mind just goes blank. Oh, I think everything else you saw today. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Betty, how much more time do we have here? Okay. So, Christine, you were going to talk some about the strategic plan that was referred to earlier.
And I really hate we're running out of time, but I also know that I'm standing between you and your dinner and the wrap up. But there is a packet, in your packet we do have a summary of our strategic plan. And we began work on this about 15 months ago as a board, and then invited the community to come in and give us input and feedback. We got 11,000 survey results. We had a town hall meeting with hundreds of people participating in a very structured feedback session. We've continued to get community support throughout the year. We had a 45-member work group, including folks from Garner, but throughout the county, working on the strategic plan. And this is an instrument that I'm truly excited about, not only affecting Garner, it's going to affect the entire school system. And it's really being lifted from this page. It's not something we put on paper and then tucked away. This is a breathing, living, breathing document that the school system is embracing and truly moving the culture of Wake County Public School System in a different, more exciting, accelerated direction. We're focused on learning and teaching. We're focused on students, and it's, I think, an exciting time to change the conversation about our public school system, both here in Garner and throughout the county, from things like student assignment and bus parking and transportation. We're moving it to academics and teaching and learning and students and teachers. And for me, I see it being a document that's being, as I said, put into action. Words that are being lifted, folks like Drew Cook, folks that Dr. Merrill has attracted from throughout the state to join his leadership team to become principals in Wake County, folks we've been training up to be principals and leaders in Wake County who are committed to working toward a growth mindset for our students and changing the culture in Wake County to truly focus on academics. So this is an exciting time for me. I really hope that you all will take time to look through this, keep up on the updates that we're bringing to the community. On Tuesday, we're going to be talking about expanding AP offerings as one example of bringing rigorous curriculum to our students, something that's a part of a tenet of our strategic plan. We're also been talking about disciplinary issues, looking at alternatives so that we can keep students in school and hold students accountable, supporting our strategic plan. It's truly being a shift in culture toward some exciting academic achievements for our students. So we have a couple of slides to reinforce our vision that all Wake County, I'm tempted to read it to you, all Wake County Public School System students will be prepared to reach their full potential and live productive lives in a complex and changing world. Really focusing on how our students are going out to have jobs that we don't even know exist yet. We're trying to prepare students for a future that we can't imagine. And next, our mission will provide a relevant and engaging education and graduate students who are in 4 C's, as we're calling them: collaboration, creativity, effective communicators, and critical thinkers. Those are the products we want to produce. Those are what we want our students to be, embracing the 4 C's across our curriculum. And then our very audacious goal by our vision for 2020, by the year 2020, we are going to be graduating annually at least 95% of our students who are ready for productive citizenship as well as higher education and a career. We want to make sure our graduates aren't just ready for college or career, but that they're going to be voting, engaged citizens in our democracy. That's the vision that we have for our community, and I'll end by focusing on that we want our students to be ready for the next great thing in our nation, in our state, and in Garner. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Betty Parker and Christine Kushner and Drew Cook. If everyone could give them a round of applause.